Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the League of Women Voters 2021 mayoral debate for Hamden, Connecticut. I'm told there were 509 people who registered for this debate tonight, so we're delighted to be here and provide this opportunity to learn much more about the candidates who want to serve us as mayor here in Hamden. My name is Judy Lehman, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Hamden North Haven Steering Committee. The League is a nonpartisan organization committed to the active involvement of citizens in their government, improving the electoral process and effective public policy. Tonight, we welcome 3 candidates to our town's virtual debate. Mr. Ron Gambardella, Republican, Ms. Lauren Garrett, Democrat, and Mr. Al Lotto, write-in candidate, Independent. We invited voters to send us questions for the candidates, and we received over 50 questions by the deadline of October 20th. A bipartisan group of League of Women Voters Hamden North Haven members reviewed the questions for clarity, duplication, conciseness, and appropriateness for an informational debate. We are not accepting any more live questions in tonight's debate. But at the end of the debate tonight, we will post important voter information in one or more links in the chat box. Our technical person is going to do that for us. And that will include a brief explanation of the reason we chose to add the 3rd candidate to the debate, 2 sample ballots available for each legislative district via the town website, 3 instructions provided by the town clerk for filling out ballots, 4 a link to vote411.org, which as of 1:30 p.m. today, all 3 mayoral candidates and 14 other Hamden candidates had responded to questions in this online voter's guide that we're using here for the very first time. And number 5, a reminder will be posted to vote on November 2nd, and information about how to find your polling place will be provided. Tonight, our experienced debate moderator is Carol Reimers, recent past president of the League of Women Voters of Connecticut. Carol moderated 4 virtual debates last week in 3 towns. One was a doubleheader, Mayor and Board of Education. Welcome back to Hamden, Carol.
Thank you very much, Judy. I would like to review the format for tonight's debate, which will be as follows. Each of the candidates will have 90 seconds for an opening statement. Then we will have a question and answer period, during which each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer to the question. After that, after each candidate has answered the question, they may take an additional 30 seconds to respond again. At the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will have 90 seconds for a closing statement. Prior to the debate, a drawing was held to determine the order of speaking for the candidates. Mr. Lotto will respond first. Mr. Gambardella will respond second, and Ms. Garrett will respond third. So let's begin. And we'll start with the opening statements, and we will begin with Mr. Lotto.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and everybody involved for inviting me tonight. My name is Al Lotto. I'm 63 years old. I was born and raised in our town. I have 2 children and 1 grandchild. For many years, I've worked 3 jobs. Personal care assistant for the state of Connecticut with a special needs child. I also drive a special needs school bus for First Student Hamden Public Schools for 20 years. And I own a successful retail business since 1993. In 2020, I started a Facebook page called Hamden Crime Watchers. There's 5,300 members. And I realized that in Hamden, even though people have different political opinions all over the spectrum, they all want the same things. Lower taxes, good education for their children, good public services, and a safe environment to live in. And one of the main problems in Hamden has been basically the same group of people have been running the town for 20 years. So I'm not running for myself or any political agenda. I started this grassroots effort to run for the people that I met through my sites and through community events. So putting this town back together piece by piece will require inclusion and honesty. And I'd love the opportunity to bridge both sides toward a brighter future for Hamden. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gambardella, please.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to this event. Thanks to the League of Women Voters. This is an excellent forum for getting information out to the voters. I do appreciate that. So I lived in Hamden since 1984 with my wife, Kathy. My career, I spent 19 years at the phone company, former SNET. My primary responsibilities in network finance, where I did manage a $1 billion budget for SNET's operations. I left there, started my own business, and what I did, I opened up an office in Hamden, in fact, directly across the street from the police department, and where I really manage three businesses. It is the accounting business, it is also pensions for individuals, and additionally, I do planning for a variety of people who are looking for health insurance. And I work off the Access Health. I'm very familiar with the insurance issues and the difficult time that people have trying to make ends meet. Hamden is facing a great problem with finances. We have $1.3 billion in long-term obligations. We have the highest debt per capita. Clearly, it's going to take someone with some financial expertise to navigate troubled waters that Hamden faces. Hamden is a great place to live. We have a lot of families who want to raise their children here. I certainly want to attract and keep people in Hamden. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett?
Hi, good evening. My name is Lauren Garrett. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate. I came to Hamden about 20 years ago and just fell in love with the diversity and the natural beauty of the town. I have 3 kids in Hamden Public Schools, 2 at the high school, and my youngest is in 4th grade. And I have a small business in town. I manage the finances for a small real estate investment business. I served on the Legislative Council for a couple of years and was the chair of education, and I served on the audit committee and the finance committee. And over the last several years, I have led efforts to educate the public about our finances. And so voters have come to trust my information and the way that I communicate with them. I have the support of our state delegation and Democrats throughout the state because they trust my democratic values and they know that they can work with me to get results for Hamden. I hope that we talk about finances and economic development and education throughout this debate. I know that we will have a couple of differences, but I'm sure that we'll come to agreement on a few areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll move right into the question and answer period. So the first question, which will sort of lead into for what some of you already said, but what qualities and qualifications make you best suited for the job of Mayor of Hamden? Mr. Lotto, you're first.
There, I think I got it on mute. Hi. All right, so for the past 2 years, I've been a member of Hamden Community for Change. We've been putting on community events. And as I said, I have a very large website that I run with a lot of members. I listen to what they think they'd like to see changed in Hamden, in our town, what they think the main problems are in our town. And I get to talk to people of all political views. And I think that I've learned a lot in the past couple of years. And I think I have the ability to make things happen. I've been in retail management most of my life and running a business and making things work. I know how to balance a budget and, maybe not for a town this size, but you learn as you go. And I think if we surround ourselves with the right people, we can make it better.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella?
Yes, I served 2 terms on the Legislative Council. In my capacity as serving, I was Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. I was also a member of the Audit Committee. I also served as a member of the Board of Trustees for Connecticut Community Colleges. And I have extensive budgeting background. I think if you look at the key issue in Hamden right now in the minds of most voters is finance. Finances are in shambles. I understand how budgets are put together. One thing that I'll bring to the table is a budget versus actual expenditure analysis, which I'll present to the Legislative Council. I absolutely will work with the Legislative Council so they can see on a month-to-month basis how we're tracking against what was proposed, and then make recommended changes to the corrective course of action should we need to do that. In addition to that, crime is another issue that people are certainly concerned with, and we'll hear a lot more, I'm sure, tonight. But I think there's something I can do in that area in terms of bringing more police on the street without necessarily increasing expenses. Everything I'll do, every decision I make will be relative and compared to any impact it will have on the ratepayers and the taxpayers of Hamden. So I understand taxpayers are fed up, they can't pay anymore. Therefore, every item, every decision will be measured against that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Garrett, you're next.
Thank you. So I did already talk about this a little bit, but I manage finances for a small real estate investment business, and business owners know that it's sink or swim. My business is successful through negotiated deals, investments, and debt reduction. These are all things that we need to do in Hamden. I have a degree in naval architecture and marine engineering, and as we move through increasing our economic development in Hamden, it's going to take a lot of infrastructure repairs. And with an engineering background, I will be leading our efforts in infrastructure repairs. Being mayor means being a leader. And I've shown my leadership in communicating with the public about our financial issues and in building a very diverse slate of candidates on row A. I can work with them to get results for Hamden, and I can work with our state delegation that supports me. We need to tap into the experience with our legislative council and our Board of Education. I have 3 kids in Hamden Public Schools, so I have direct knowledge of what's needed in our schools, and voters trust my democratic values.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lotto, do you have anything you would like to add to this question? No, Mr. Gambardella?
No, regarding certification, I'm an enrolled agent, which has been approved by the Internal Revenue Service, a 2-day examination, well, in all aspects of tax. I could practice in all 50 states and U.S. territories. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting and economics and an MBA in finance.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Garrett, anything you want to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, we're on to the next question. What are your 2 best ideas for reducing the high debt per capita tax burden on residents of Hamden while maintaining essential programs and services? Mr. Gambardella, you're first.
Yeah, so there's 2 components to that. There's the revenue generation component and there's the expense control component. In terms of revenue generation, which would help offset any expenditures going forward, we need to attract more businesses to Hamden. But before we can attract more businesses to Hamden, we have to control crime. Crime is an issue. It is not perceived, it's actual. I just was in a meeting today with the Hamden Police presenting to Whitney Center. And they said last week was a high crime rate. People are afraid to shop. So how am I going to attract businesses to Hamden if they're afraid to shop? They're going to go elsewhere. They're going to go to North Haven, they're going to go to Wallingford. So essentially, the crime that most people are concerned with is the unreported crime. People being approached in parking lots and looking for jobs and donations and money and gunshots randomly fired at night. You got to get that under control. Then you invite businesses into Hamden. Then on the expense side, we need to look at contracts that will be coming up for negotiation. We have to have contracts that will be fairly negotiated. And I'm not saying we're going to take away livelihoods of people in Hamden who work for Hamden. That is not what this is all about. It's giving us flexibility in terms of how we deploy our workforce to get some maximum efficiencies and hopefully control costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett, you're next.
Thank you. So debt is something that I've been talking about for years. We have the most debt per capita, and I really led the charge on discussing that issue. So what we need to do is create a 5-year plan, because businesses want to know that we can stabilize our taxes. We need to negotiate contracts with unions for savings. We need to send contracts for services out to bid. And this is really important and a really great way to save on expenses. Our medical is $60 million a year. And this is a contract that's not been sent out to bid in decades because of political connections. So send that out to bid and have a competitive bid process. We need to right-size departments for efficiency and productivity, and we need to get more grants from the state of Connecticut. Our state delegation is ready and willing to help us through bonding for the Keith Community Center, our firehouse, but we have to work with them and communicate with them to make this happen. And we have $30 million from the American Recovery Act coming. We need to spend this on infrastructure and get our economy going. Economic development is going to have increased jobs and opportunities. And 20 years ago, we had higher crime than we do today, and we had a thriving business community. We can be there again.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto, you're next.
Okay, so my plan, my 5-year plan, has a way to go forward with making the town money as opposed to asking the residents constantly to shell out more money. We do have the most debt per capita, and we need to stabilize the rising of the mill rate. We need contract negotiations. I have a plan to move forward with a cannabis dispensary. I've done research with this. In Massachusetts, for instance, the sales annually for 2020 were $15.3 million that went back to the town that the dispensary was in. This is a way for Hamden to make more money and reinvest that money into the beautification and revitalization of our town, which will attract businesses. It's a known fact that it reduces crime, and the people that support dispensaries also support other businesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella, do you have anything you'd like to add to this question?
Yeah, I do. If I refer back for a moment to the Whitney Center presentation by the police officers, they had an incident where a woman was robbed, her pocketbook was stolen, and the police were not trying to do any kind of fear mongering. That's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to instill awareness to people. They know that there's an high incidence of crime, and they want people to feel safer than they are, and they're doing the best they can to bring that under control. But the issue is it's in the minds of shoppers, and if it's in the minds of shoppers, they in fact won't shop.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett, do you have anything
Yes.
to add?
Economic development is such a wonderful tool for us to bring down our mill rate because it takes the burden off of taxpayers, but it also provides opportunities, good paying jobs. And these are the things that drive down crime. Statistics show us this, and that's why I think that it's so important for us to tackle economic development.
Mr. Lotto, anything to add?
Yes, I'd have to say I agree with Lauren 100% on that. We do have 20 police officers that we're short at the moment. I think the combination of both reinvesting in our development and adding the 20 police officers combination will solve the crime issue. Well, we'll at least attempt to solve the crime issue that way. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question. What changes do you believe are needed to make the Keefe Center better able to meet the demands of the Hamden community? And Ms. Garrett, you're first, please.
Yeah, so we need a lot of work over at our Keefe Community Center. There's water intrusion. The space is no longer adequate for the programming that we need. We have so many great community organizers and youth programmers that are out there that want space to put their programming in front of students and just need space really to do this. So we really need an expansion and a renovation for Keefe Community Center, and our state delegation is trying to get bonding through the governor's office. I have a good relationship with our governor, our lieutenant governor, and I'm very excited to be able to get this for Hamden. I know that we can get our bonding pushed through. And so this is really great because this means that we don't have to put this on the back of the taxpayers. We can have the state pay for our renovations to our Keefe Community Center. And that's what's needed to get more programming through the Keefe Community Center. We have food that is put through our Keefe Community Center. I spent a few nights serving hot meals to people in our community. We need a kitchen in the Keefe Community Center so that we can keep that program going. And really, it's all about more space because we're doing so much through Keefe right now.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto, you're next.
Yes, I think that the Keefe Community Center has done a great deal for Hamden and its programs, feeding people. So many different departments are run out of the Keefe Community Center that are of importance. It desperately needs to be fixed up. We have, for too many years, let our town buildings decay and not reinvested in our buildings that we need. And I think that the Keefe is one of them. So again, I agree with Lauren on that one. I think that we need to get as much money as possible from the state to do it so that it's not a burden on the taxpayers. It needs to be added on to and renovated so that it's more useful than it already is.
Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, the Keefe Center is in fact a reflection of how we treated the southern part of Hamden in its whole. We neglected it. Unfortunately, the folks in southern Hamden sometimes don't even feel like they're part of Hamden. This would be one way of reuniting the community by investing in that particular building and space, making it more inviting and attractive, bringing in other services that currently are not existing there. I mean, there was a question in the last debate about diabetes. And perhaps we could put a clinic in there or provide, if we're gonna do renovations, why not put a clinic into the facility so that people have easy access to it and access to information. There's no question that the entire area needs to be renovated, to tell you the truth, and sidewalks need to be repaired, and people need to feel that they are part of the Hamden community at large. Part of our responsibility is to make sure that's inclusive, and that's what I in fact will do.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Garrett, would you like to add any more?
Sure, thank you. So in addition to what's already at the Keefe Community Center, we need room for a library, more computer classes and technology at the Keefe Community Center, healthcare over at the Keefe Community Center. And people need to feel welcome when they go there. It's kind of an austere building as it is right now. And I know that we can do so much better for our residents in Southern Hamden.
Okay, Mr. Lotto, anything you would like to add?
Sure. I think that if we're talking about attracting businesses to Hamden, a very important issue is that both south end of Hamden and the north end of Hamden have their own problems. And I think that we need to beautify both ends to attract business as well. They've been neglected for too long.
Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, part of the southern part of Hamden is the old middle school, and there are, I walked around town, I talked to people, and what the town is proposing for that area is not what the people want for that area. I think part of what I need to do as mayor, and will do, is talk to people and want to know, give them a voice in government. They don't want what the government is selling. And therefore I will take their input and we will re-look at that particular property and put something in place that the people who live there, reside there, want there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're on to our next question. Let's discuss public safety. What do you believe are the main public safety problems and issues in Hamden? And what do you intend to do about them as mayor? Mr. Lotto, you're first.
Okay, so that's an easy one. We need to start with filling the vacant slots in the Hamden Police Department. Their union contracts, we need to fill them. I think that we need to work more closely with the public and the PD and have restructuring kind of in the sense that once those positions are filled, we need to figure out the best areas for the police officers on duty to monitor what's going on in our town. No disrespect to the Hamden Police at all. I just think that people feel that when an incident occurs, they always seem to be on the wrong side of town. And we need to work with that. We have a wonderful program called the SBCP Council that works between the community and the police. And I think that we need to move forward with those kind of problems and programs and address the issue of crime with the police and the public. I'd like to see public meetings discussing more of what people want to see.
Thank you, Mr. Gambardella.
Yeah, earlier I said that every decision I'll make will be looked at and measured against the impact it would have on the taxpaying public. One way we could get more police on the street, as an example of innovative thinking and solving problems, is that the police currently are working an extraordinary amount of overtime. In fact, they cannot sustain the level of overtime that they're currently working with the level they have for staff. So I will negotiate with the police union. I've discussed this with the police chief. He likes the idea. And what that would be is we would take the savings that we are currently paying at time and a half for the officers and then hire retired police officers part-time. That way we don't have to pay any benefits. And these officers will be certified, and we can bring them on the street and increase the presence of police officers in areas that need it, such as the shopping centers. So this is one way of taking some idea about how to get more police on the street without increasing the cost to the taxpaying public. This is really first and foremost what we have to do, and thinking outside the box and trying to control costs. We can't simply say yes to everything. We need to balance the demands that people need and the services that they want against the cost for those services. And this is one way where we can do both.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Garrett, you're next.
Thank you. Everyone in our community has the right to feel safe in our community. Preventing crime is all about addressing the root causes such as employment, safe housing, food security, and family support. When we provide good paying jobs, affordable housing, youth programming, and treatment for mental illness and substance disorders, we can see crime decrease. Crime is a sign that we're failing society, that society is failing some of the people in our community. So we need to concentrate on a crisis response team. And what's really great is that the police department has issued a report to the state of Connecticut saying that there are about 2,500 cases every year where a social worker can respond better than the police department can. So we need to utilize a crisis response team for calls for mental health, and we can have an effect on trauma-informed policing. Trauma-informed policing means that when we respond to a call, we evaluate to make sure that people who experience trauma get help for that, because trauma in our society perpetuates more violence. We need to use data-driven evidence and solution-based evidence so that we can have a police department that is part of our community, and community policing is going to help us do a better job for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto, do you have anything to add?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Gambardella?
Yes. Let me translate what Mrs. Garrett said. She's soft on crime. She thinks that the criminals are the victims and the victims are the criminals. It's all backwards. If we follow that line of thinking, we'll be sending social workers to situations that require a police officer. My suggestion would be de-escalate the situation, perhaps detain the person who's causing the issue, and then get him the help that he needs once he's safe and secure. That's a simple, common sense approach to crime.
Ms. Garrett?
So you don't need to put words into my mouth. I did just fine explaining myself. And what I said was that the police department agrees with me and that they issued a report to the state of Connecticut that a crisis response team would better serve mental health calls. So I think that we can have community policing, a crisis response team, trauma-informed policing, and do a better job for all of the citizens of Hamden and reduce crime.
Thank you. We're on to the next question. How would you work to ensure the town has enough resources to implement any changes in general election voting procedures that occur in the next 2 years? And Mr. Gambardella, you are first.
Yeah, well, yeah, as far as funding for the necessary safeguards to ensure fair and adequate elections, I absolutely support that. And it seems like that would be an initiative that should be state sponsored. And I think there are initiatives underway that would ensure that it would happen. So clearly the funding, I would look to the state to get that. Again, once again, it all comes back to what's the input or what's the impact on the taxpaying public. And if it's increasing the tax burden, we have to find alternate ways to get the funding that's necessary, even if it means grant writing. Grant writers pay for themselves. We hired grant writers, they write grants, they procure the funding, necessary funding, and they also cover their salaries. So I'll be using grant writing capabilities wherever it is feasible to do so. And essentially, that is one way we can get the funding that's necessary to put the safeguards in place to ensure fair and adequate elections. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Garrett, you're next.
Thank you. So I'm really excited to work with our next town clerk, Karima Mickens. She has expertise in business and organizational skills that will really benefit the town clerk's office. And what we saw from the 2020 election, during the pandemic, voters were able to vote by absentee ballot, and our town clerk's office had to send out absentee applications to every single voter. And there was so much more work for the town clerk's office to process. But the state of Connecticut did have grants available so that our town clerk's office could hire additional workers. And I think that the state did a very great job of making sure that we had money for staff. They had constant communications with the town clerks throughout the state. And we had drop boxes for safe and secure ballots. There's so much that the state really did help us out with, and I appreciate their collaboration. And I'm excited to work with the Secretary of State's office to make sure that Hamden's elections remain fair and without an expensive burden on the taxpayers.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto?
Okay, so we do need a grant writer, and we do need to take advantage of all the grants that are available to us. Every grant helps fix a problem without taking money out of taxpayers' pockets. So I think that we need to take advantage of the grants from the state of Connecticut. We need to make sure that we have a fully staffed department to handle the mail-in ballots and whatever else needs to be done. And I'd like to take the opportunity to also say that Melinda Saller is running for town clerk as well as a write-in. And she has such great experience with the town. She's been on the BOE as well. And I believe that regardless of who wins, we just need a good person in town hall to take care of it.
Okay, Mr. Gambardella, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to second Melinda Soler. I did endorse her. I think she'd make a wonderful town clerk. She is a write-in candidate, so like Al, you have to write her name in on the ballot in order to recognize her. Also, we have a great underticket on the Republican side of the House, and folks, it's a diverse group of people who, in fact, want what's best for the town of Hamden. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, any more to add?
I would just add that the Republican slate is not diverse, but the Democratic slate is incredibly diverse, both in terms of life experience and professional experience. And I'm really excited to work with them.
Mr. Lotto, any more you would like to say?
Sure, I'd like to add that I don't have a slate other than JK, who's running at large, but I'm willing to work with whoever. I think that the people of Hamden need to realize that they need to elect the best person, or the person that they feel is best to represent their district. And I think it's the mayor's job to work hand in hand with whomever those people are. That's the way you get things done.
Okay, we're on to our next question. As mayor, what will you do to better ensure the expansion of housing options in Hamden that are affordable to people at all income levels? And Ms. Garrett, you're first.
Thank you. So affordable housing is really necessary because it's very expensive to live in the state of Connecticut. It's not just our property taxes, it's also our food expenses and our utility expenses. So we need to make sure that folks have the ability to have different points of entry for living in all of our neighborhoods. I've worked with Spring Forward. It's a group that was established to bring awareness to zoning problems in Hamden. And I'm committed to changing zoning laws so that we can increase access to mostly white neighborhoods. And we can do this through more accessory dwelling units, mixed use buildings, conversion to duplex, and multifamily affordable housing. We really need to reverse the legacy of zoning and other practices that have segregated our town. And using affordable housing is a really good way for us to desegregate our town, which is very necessary considering that we are required by the state of Connecticut to desegregate our schools, which are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated.
Okay, next, Mr. Lotto.
So there's a wonderful affordable housing complex on Whitney Avenue that was built a year or two ago. I think that the public needs to be taught more about affordable housing. Sometimes people have the wrong impression of affordable housing and what it is. It's actually a wonderful program. There's condo complexes that allow so many units to be used for affordable housing, and all it does is they go by your income, and if you make if you make a lower salary than what is or per percentage of what is normal for the town you live in or the area you live in, you can qualify for affordable housing. And it is a wonderful thing to help single moms, single families, and anybody that can't normally afford to live in the area. So I'm all for that, all for affordable housing.
Thank you, Mr. Gambardella.
Yes, once again, I have to find myself translating for Mrs. Garrett. So let me make it clearer than she did it. She essentially wants to change zoning laws so that high density, low income properties would be located throughout town, anywhere in town, with no restrictions. Okay, so if that's what you want, certainly Lauren Garrett gets your vote. But if you want more responsible planning, let me suggest an alternative. If you talk to the people who are most affected by this, and I'm talking about people all over town, especially in the southern end of town, there's a proposal for high capacity, high density, low income property right there where the middle school is. They're not objecting to property being built or cultivated or changed to accommodate folks living in that community. What they want to see is home ownership. So why not think outside the box again? So you have people who are struggling for places to live. We have a chapter or Section 8 program that provides a lot of funds. Why not change the program so that it encourages home ownership and satisfies what the people in that community really want? They want the pride of ownership, and that's one way that we can do it. We can have a mixed-use property, but also put in stores located on that property so it's convenient for people in the neighborhood. This is innovative ways to address the issues that Mrs. Garrett is raising without necessarily disrupting the entire town. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, would you like to add anything to this question?
Yes, thank you. I really don't need you speaking for me. Ron, it seems, wants to use affordable housing to segregate Hamden. And that is not acceptable. Those are not democratic values, obviously. And Hamden voters are not going to go for that. We do need affordable housing. And as Mr. Lotto was saying, when you make about 60% of the income for the median income for the area, you only pay for about 30% of the rent.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto, would you like to add any more?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing. Affordable housing also involves condos and does encourage people to own. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Gambardella?
Yes, Mrs. Garrett claims to know what people want. She hasn't talked to the same people that I've talked to because they are adamant what they want in their neighborhoods. They know what they want. Take the church school, for example. People saying that because of the demographics in the school that we need to close the school down. But the people who actually attend the school, the parents of the children who attend the school, like the school just the way it is. Nobody is saying that they should close it down. Listen to the people that you're claimed to be representing. And unfortunately, Mrs. Garrett, you seem to have a deaf ear, and that is first and foremost on people's minds.
All right, we're on to the next question again. What does the town need to do in the short and long term to protect its residents and vital infrastructure from the effects of climate change? Mr. Gambardella, you are first.
Okay,
oh, no,
so
I'm sorry, Mr. Lotto's
okay,
first. I apologize.
it's okay.
Well, I already think we're doing quite a bit. I think that we're making solar panels available to people to turn their house green. And I think that there's other programs out there that we can use. Honestly, I think that we can just develop more of those and figure out ways to promote a green town. That's it. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Gambardella, you may speak.
Yeah, so if you look at the number of buildings that the town has, school buildings in particular, and various office buildings and other structures around town, those roofs make an ideal location for solar panels, and they happen to be in bright and sunny spots, so we can get a lot of solar electricity produced from these panels, and hopefully lower our electric bills at the same time be environmentally concerned. I also like to build. To tell you the truth, I'd like to try putting windmills up where the transfer station is. There's plenty of that seems to be an extraordinarily windy area. And it may be a good place which would not be disturbing to any neighborhood and still produce electricity for the town of Hamden, which is, again, lowers the cost. And maybe perhaps there are grants and federal funding available to allow us to do that without, again, burdening the taxpayer. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, next.
Thank you. So for me, I have put solar panels on my house. I have switched my heating and cooling over to electric heat pumps. So my solar panels are heating and cooling my home. I also drive an electric car. So I am trying the best I can to reduce my carbon footprint. And that's what I want to do in Hamden. Make sure that we're increasing the miles per gallon for our town fleet. More solar panels on buildings. We need to have more green infrastructure in Hamden because it reduces our expenses and it's also really great for the environment. This is important to me. I want to make sure that the world is safe for my children and everybody else's children. So in addition to that, we also know that because of climate change, we see stronger and more powerful, more frequent storms. So we need to take a look at our infrastructure for stormwater drainage. Basements and cars flood on certain streets because our drainage system is not able to carry away the water after sometimes just a medium amount of rain. In addition to that, trees are excellent for absorbing some of the water on our streets. So there's so much that we can use for environmentally friendly options that are good for our pocketbooks and also really great for the environment.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto, would you like to add anything?
I'm all set, thank you.
Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, I'm just to say that I am in favor of environmental friendly opportunities in Hamden, wherever we can deploy whatever is available to us in terms of technology. Let's take advantage of it if it makes sense to do so. If it costs, like, for example, I think you mentioned you have 2 electrical vehicles from, I think, Tesla. I could be wrong about that, but if you do, that's wonderful, but they are expensive, and not many people can afford those cars. And the electrical cars are very expensive. Therefore, we have to balance the
Thank you.
cost of the technology against the benefit.
Ms. Garrett, you want to add anything?
Sure. I drive a VW electric. It is $19,000. And this is actually a pretty affordable car. And there's so much that we can do for our environment. And I'm excited that I'll have the opportunity to make some of these changes with a background in engineering, particularly in hydrodynamic, with some expertise in hydrodynamics. I understand what we need to do with our water.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're on to the next one again. How would you prioritize increasing the livability of Hamden in terms of access to parks and open space, recreational activities, walkability, and bikeability? And Mr. Gambardella, you are first.
Well, I already use our linear pass. I probably use that during the summertime 4 or 5 days a week. And I am absolutely committed to keeping that linear park in pristine condition, because I know when I'm on it, there are people who enjoy it and certainly see that as a gem for Hamden. And more than that, the park that we have in the center of town, that could use some improvement. And slowly but surely, there are improvements being made. I think the Lions Club, and I could be wrong about this, but they're putting sidewalks in terms of who exactly is doing it. And I think that's a great idea. It's community involvement. Some people want to get involved, and I really don't see any issue with that, especially, like, for example, memorializing a loved one. Maybe you want to put in a park bench and put your plaque on there for a loved one, so it's a remembrance. And yet it helps ensure walkable areas and pleasantly look at. And essentially, we have to be innovative in terms of how we do it, but I am absolutely in favor of beautifying Hamden and making sure people use the resources that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett, you're next.
Thank you. So we need to work with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and community advocates and get the Olin Powder Farm cleaned up. It's a beautiful area. It's over 100 acres in southern Hamden, and I'd really like to see this be a state park. And as we know, state parks are good for economic development because the surrounding businesses get a boost from more people visiting the area. We also need to make sure that our sidewalks are in good condition because we need walkable economic areas. So we have on the Legislative Council, Ted Stevens, running in the 8th District, is a transportation planner, and I'm excited to work with him so that we can reimagine our spaces and make sure that we're looking at biking and foot traffic, because this is very good for business. And we've got all these great areas in town: Sleeping Giant, West Rock, Lake Wintergreen, and the canal line. there's so much that we can do for people when they get out and get exercise and see each other outside. And we know from the pandemic that, you know, these outdoor spaces have been really vital for mental health and getting some fresh air in between Zoom.
Mr. Lotto, you're next.
Okay, so my thought on this is that Hamden has some wonderful places. We have Sleeping Giant, we have Brooksvale, we have the Linear Trail. We really don't have a lot of programs that promote events at these places. I think we could have bike races, we could have all kinds of community involvement in supporting what we have already. Unfortunately, Lauren, I disagree with you on the Olin Power Farm. I feel that unless we can clean it up at no expense to the people, it will still cost us a lot of money, even to police.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Okay, I believe that we're ready for the next question. So what is your vision for Hamden over the next 5 years, and name 3 specific priorities? Ms. Garrett, you're first.
Sure. My vision for Hamden is really that we have a vibrant community with great businesses and stores and restaurants, good schools, and a tax rate that people can afford. So that is really what my priorities are now. We need to get our finances under control, and we can do this with a 5-year plan and decreasing our expenses, like I mentioned before, with sending contracts out to bid. But the real saver for our mill rate is going to be economic development. So we need to change some of our zoning regulations to come in line with the plan of conservation and development. And we need to really attract businesses. That's going to take a mayor going to the business community and explaining why Hamden is a great place for them to start their business. And for our economic development to be successful, we need strong workforce development. And that's going to take our schools. We need to make sure that our schools are great for our students and we have positive student outcomes. We can do so much better in our schools. And we need to promote trades jobs so that when it comes to our workforce development, we're ready with construction jobs. I went and visited the construction union up in Wallingford, and they have this great program where you can make money and it's not expensive.
Mr. Lotto, you're next.
Yes, as I said earlier, I think that one of the important things that we need to do in Hamden is figure out how to make money for the town and promote it and make it desirable to other businesses. I think we need to beautify the main roads through town. Dixwell Avenue has its moments. It just doesn't look great. We could fix it up, make it more desirable for the community. I also think that yes, taxes are an issue. I believe that we can combat the taxes if we're open to new ideas. Like I said earlier, a dispensary will make money for the town. Again, people have a bad perception of that at some point, but the people that support this are people with money. They're lawyers, they're working class people. And they support other businesses, and it will help economic development. We can make grow facilities out of old factories and really make Hamden look more desirable visually and for business as well.
Mr. Gambardella.
Yeah, top 3 would be, of course, the finances of the town, followed by rising crime rates, and then followed by economic development. With regard to the financial impact on the town, we need to take a different approach to budgeting. I mentioned often zero-based budgeting, and some folks don't understand the concept. It simply means you start with nothing and you build your budget up, starting with your workforce and what it takes to support the workforce, supplies, etc. You build it up item by item by item. Why is that necessary? Because what happens with budgeting, as I have experienced again with budgeting, is that you suffer from incrementalism. And what that simply means is that what you believe that you spent last year is what you think you're going to need next year plus some. That's incrementalism. And we need to eliminate that line of thinking. You have to justify every dollar that goes into the budget, something that hasn't been done in the past. Also, I would suggest that the Legislative Council would give a proposal to the department head saying, what does a 2% reduction look like, a 3% and a 4% reduction? Then we would assess the impact on the taxpaying public to see whether or not there's acceptable risks if we lower the budget item to those levels. That's really because they don't have the expertise to develop the individual departments. So they spend hours and hours doing it, produces no fruit at all. They end up with higher budgets. Crime, want to put more police in the street, and economic development. I can hardly tell you what it is, but one point I want to make is I'll have to get it next time. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, do you have any more to add?
Yes. So with regard to workforce development, I look forward to working with Dominique Baez, who is an expert in workforce development. It's important that we go into our schools and show them the jobs that are of the future and can help get Hamden back on track. And creating a more vibrant Hamden is so important to me. And the women who maintain our gardens do such a wonderful job. We get 3 seasons of beauty. And so this is the kind of stuff that keeps Hamden beautiful and attracts businesses and people.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto, anything to add?
Yes, I think that what we need to do is get a team together to work with other towns and find out what works for them, and we can work together. People are sick and tired of North Haven getting all the new businesses while Hamden's storefronts remain empty. If we want the mill rate to go down, we need to entice business.
Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, so my point was with regard to small businesses in Hamden, they just received their property declarations. The first year you put property in service, whether it be machinery, supplies, inventory, etc., it's assessed at a 95% rate. I'm going to propose that we reduce that rate from 95% assessment to 50% assessment in the first year. It doesn't cost the town anything. It's incremental revenue to the town, and it encourages business to invest in Hamden. That's an idea that I have, and I know it will go play well. I manage 18 small businesses. I know what's on their mind and what they have to deal with day in and day out.
Yeah. On to 10th question. What are your plans for providing town services in the most cost-effective manner? Mr. Lotto, you're first.
Again, I think that we need to work with other towns and find out what works for them. There's talk of an animal shelter, for instance, in Hamden. I think that if we work hand in hand with a surrounding town, we can reduce our costs and solve the problem. It's been pushed off for way too long. I think that there's probably other things that we can come together to save costs on. I do know that a lot of people were very upset that we had to cancel big trash pickup last year. We need to prioritize what the people need and what the people want and work from there to try to eliminate the non-essential things that we don't need, but not hurt any of the important services.
Mr. Gambardella, you're next.
Yes, 2 things I like to do. One is a forensic audit, and the other one's an operational audit. With a forensic audit, we're going to try to find out what the town has been doing for the last 20 years, so examining closely the sources and uses of funds. With an operational audit, what we're going to try to do is look at each department and see if there's operational efficiencies that we can develop between the departments. I also will be negotiating with unions to give us some additional flexibility around the work rules. The work rules right now are inflexible, and consequently, when you want to do something, you either have to create a new position or you have to negotiate overtime, etc. Now, again, I'm not looking to take bread off the table of union workers. I want to work with the union. I love the unions. It's just that we need some flexibility. We all know that the town is in grave financial danger, and we have to take approaches that have not been tried in the past. It's important that we go down a new way of thinking. The old way is no longer working. It's impossible right now for us to pay back $1.3 billion of long-term obligations. It can't be done unless things are changed. And we have to change how we approach doing business in Hamden. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett?
Thank you. I actually agree with Mr. Gambardella on a couple of the issues. So one of them is an operational audit. I proposed putting an efficiency audit into the budget when I first served on council, and unfortunately it was swept at the end of the year, so nothing really happened with that. But that's something that I would love to do as mayor. The other agreement that I actually had was in terms of some regionalization. So we need to regionalize our 911 dispatch. Our state representative, Mike D'Agostino, has talked a lot about this. And unfortunately, what we're seeing sometimes is that 911 calls with a cell phone don't always go to the municipality where the event has occurred. And we also know that 911 dispatch is going to need a huge amount of money for compliance with the FCC. So that we can update some of our equipment. And it would be really great if we could update with some regional efforts. Trash disposal is another regional concern that we have. And the other thing that I would like to do is create a municipal maintenance plan for public works so that all the jobs that public works does, street sweeping, filling potholes, picking up leaf bags, cleaning out storm drains, all of this will be put on the town website so that we have accountability and efficiencies built in, and we can really see where public works is.
Mr. Lauder, would you like to add anything?
No, I'm all set. Thank you. I do agree with regionalization and efficiency audits. I'd also like to see a BOE audit as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, I'd also like to get into public-private relationships. And the easiest way I can explain that is with landscapers. They could adopt a building, a ballpark, a facility of some kind. And we would, at the end of the season, compare the magic arts of a landscaper and how they beautify a particular project or building or ballpark. And we would compare one against the other. They would be able to advertise their service. They could grow their business. They'd add to Hamden, and it costs the taxpayer nothing. We get beautiful ballparks and fields and buildings. And again, no impact on the taxpayer. The public works people will be redeployed in other areas. There's plenty of work to do for public works.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett, anything you add?
No, thank you.
Okay. Next question. Over the next 2 years, what town and school capital projects would you prioritize? As mayor, how would you ensure that these projects get implemented? And the first answer is Mr. Gambardella.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is work with parents. I think parents is where it all begins and ends. Lately, parents have been shoveled to the side and their voices aren't heard. I'm going to give them a voice. For example, when we're talking about major construction projects or what needs to be done in a particular building or a particular school, I would like to bring parents together in a group to discuss and debate the issues of what has to be done and then make recommendations to the mayor. The mayor doesn't know everything, and to do what the will of the people will be requires for me to listen to them, and we have to give them a voice. It's what I call giving the people of the town of Hamden a voice. They're very frustrated right now. They don't feel like their voices are being heard. I have an opportunity for them to participate in government, and we will get the only requirement, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, the only requirement is you want to do what's best for the town of Hamden. So when schools are being looked at, we want to prioritize which school, because that's right there alone is an issue. What school should be done first? Everybody wants to compete for the same pool of money. So we want to be sure everyone is heard. And then what will come of that is a natural order of how buildings and improvements will be addressed. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, you're next.
Thank you. I think that it's really important that we talk to our elected officials, our legislative council that has to approve the bonding for these projects, and our Board of Education that is inside of the schools and evaluating the needs of our schools. I don't want to create an echo chamber that just gives the mayor kind of the wrong, what we've seen for some of the other school discussions is that there are certain schools that have a stronger voice. And that's not always the school that's most in need because of working parents having 2 to 3 jobs and not being able to attend meetings. So it's not always fair to request to hear from parents because sometimes parents are not able to get there to advocate for themselves and their children. What I know from being in our schools is that Shepherd Glen is in great need of work. Ridge Hill is also in great need of work. And we're probably going to have to concentrate on Shepherd Glen first because some of the projects that can be done at Ridge Hill can be done through the non-priority list, which just means that they can get a roof and it doesn't have to be part of a larger project. Then they can get windows replaced without it being a full-scale renovation.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto?
Yes, I have a different approach to our schools. I think that there's some talk of closing schools. And I honestly don't believe that sending more children to bigger buildings is the answer. I think people love our community schools, but they've been so neglected. The buildings are crumbling. We need to fix up our schools. We need to focus on the schools and find out why on Zillow and Realtor, our schools for Hamden have such poor ratings. We need to figure it out and we need to better our school system and the buildings as well. I also think that the Keefe Center, which we've spoken about, needs great renovation and we need to invest in community centers and things that are helpful to the community in general.
Mr. Gambardella, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I'd like to be clear about my position on parents. They have a voice. I want them to be heard. I want their opinions to be known. Unfortunately, the whole process has been so politicized that they feel that they've been shoved aside and are now thought of last rather than first. These are your children. You need to be heard, and I will give you an opportunity to make your voices heard loud and clear.
Ms. Garrett?
Thank you. I think that parents are very involved in their students' lives, mostly. And so what we see is parents attending more and more Board of Education meetings, and they do have their voices heard, and it's really great to hear from them. I know that as the chair of the Education Committee, I was in our schools and I got to see what renovations were needed. Some of them are pretty great because we have water intrusion issues and our students shouldn't be put in those environments.
Mr. Lotto, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that one of the things that Ron alluded to was that parents don't have a voice. And I just wanted to say that for the last year, I have been working diligently with all of the people and all of their voices that belong to my site. And we do talk about important issues and what they want every day. So I hear what they're looking for and they do have a voice. They have a voice. They just need somebody to execute what they want.
Thank you. Next question. What steps would you take to move Hamden into renewable energy and green jobs?
I'm sorry, did you say my name? There was some noise.
Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
Okay, good.
Oh,
All right. So
did you hear the question?
I think you said more green energy
Move
jobs.
Hamden into renewable energy and green jobs.
Yes. So really, this is also about workforce development. We're going to need so many more electricians because a lot of our green technology, green infrastructure is based off of solar panels and creating energy, even wind turbines, that's energy. As an engineer, I'm really excited to get to work on all of this stuff. I know how to read schematics. I know how to put a plan together and get the ball rolling. I think that it's going to take a lot of us as individual municipalities to do the work so that we can have a greater effect on climate change. And really, there's a lot that needs to be done in Hamden. Our buildings need solar panels. And putting all of this stuff together creates green energy jobs. So we can do so much more for our community in terms of reducing our carbon footprint, but also creating the jobs of the future.
Thank you, Mr. Lotto. You're next.
Yes, I do believe that things like trees and solar panels all promote green. And I do believe that we need to focus on more programs within our schools to encourage people to become involved in things like solar panels and electricity, electrician programs, all of that kind of stuff I think helps. At the same time, I just want to add that I do see some information being brought out in other countries where the discarding of the solar panels is becoming a problem. And there also are car charging stations that have been left behind to rot. So we need to make sure we balance and do more research on all of that so that we don't wind up with another problem for our children's children. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Gambardella.
Yeah, when you're saying green jobs, I assume you mean in general, not necessarily employed by Hamden. So I agree that if we put in solar panels and we need people to install the solar panels, maintain the solar panels, but not necessarily Hamden employees to do that. So in that sense, it does in fact create jobs. With regard to some more permanent, environmentally friendly businesses, I see really the cannabis business as two businesses, one being cultivation, the other being distribution. Distribution is more of a thorny issue, and that was going to require some input in the citizens of Hamden. But cultivation, that's a green. I mean, you think about it, nothing more green than that. And you would have to build a building. You need power. Hopefully, it'd be solar power or wind power. You would bring in jobs and people to maintain the facility and the operation itself. I think that's something that Hamden should seriously consider because it's a great source of revenue and something that I think that people of Hamden will get behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you. So yes, these would be jobs that would not be under the town's budget, but we do have sustainable CT. So we are enrolled in sustainable CT, and this is a really great organization that evaluates some of the work that we can do in our town to make sure that we have environmental standards and there are grant opportunities through sustainable CT once we start to achieve benchmarks. So we need to really increase our productivity there.
Thank you. Mr. Lotto, would you like to add anything?
I'm all set, thank you.
Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, just one word on grants. I absolutely do agree. Grants are key. You know, it's when you think about it, grants pay for themselves. They pay for the people who are writing the grants. Why not increase the number of people writing grants? It would increase the number of revenue coming into the town and hopefully help the taxpaying public. So grants really will be a way to, it's a normal course of doing business in the town of Hamden. That's just the way it's going to be going forward.
Okay, thank you. What specific steps will you take to ensure accountability and transparency in all town government departments? And Mr. Lotto, you're first.
Well, I think that the first thing that comes to mind is that I've heard for years that the BOE doesn't have any transparency at all. And I think that we need to reorganize the way budgets are presented to the people. And we need to be completely transparent about where the money is spent and what it's spent on. And part of the focus on the BOE is that they don't do that as much as they should. And I think that we need to just work on basically telling the public exactly where their money's going, making more things available. Our Hamden website is just so hard to navigate. It's awful, but I think that we should put that information out there more often for everyone to see, and it should be easily accessible for starters.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, I also am a registered representative. Some members of the audience may also be registered representatives, and they know what's required for the best interest of their clients. They have to be accountable, and they have to protect the people that they represent. So in my opinion, I think it all starts with education, training, and reinforcement. It's not a one-time thing. It's a continuous process. Every single year, I have to get recertified and attest to the fact that I am adhering to the rules, the regulations, and guidelines that have been set up for the practice. And we can do exactly the same thing for employees of the town. Sometimes, you distance yourself from the training. You need a refresher course. You get sidetracked, distracted, whatever. You absolutely have to attest to the fact that you've taken the training, and you'll be held accountable, and your behavior and what you do in the job will be tested against the rules that you've already agreed to comply with.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Garrett?
Yes, so the town website was recently updated, and while it's better than the old town website, it's not a very high bar because the old town website was terrible. So we need to make sure that we put more detailed minutes on our town website. I think that it's done pretty well for the Legislative Council. The Board of Education minutes do need more details. So I took it upon myself to do this work. And so I frequently write my own notes from the Board of Education meetings and other meetings around town to let parents know what's going on at our Board of Education meetings, because not everybody can attend. But we have seen through the pandemic that with Zoom capabilities, we can watch a Board of Education meeting, a Legislative Council meeting, a Planning and Zoning meeting from home, which is very convenient for people. So it's important that we continue this practice and have Zoom available for participation for our council members who might be traveling for work, but also for parents and citizens in Hamden to see what's going on in their town. We also have recorded meetings, which is really important. And this is all done through Zoom. And I guess it's the silver lining of the pandemic that we've all become a little bit more informed about what's going on in town and able to participate.
Okay, Mr. Lotto, do you have anything you would like to add? Mr.
No, thank you.
Gambardella?
I just found it interesting that Mrs. Garrett said they could use Zoom meetings for parents, but earlier she said parents couldn't get involved in their own child's life because they don't have the time to participate. Zoom meetings are a perfect way of getting their involvement and getting them a voice as far as educational issues are concerned. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, would you like to add anything?
So I've spoken and contacted many voters throughout this election. I've attempted to contact over 27,000 voters. And so I'm hearing from people all the time, and they do enjoy the Zoom component. And as a parent of 3 kids in our Hamden Public Schools, I have a very good idea of what parents are able to do. Because you can watch a meeting later, because it's recorded, it's really effective to have these Zoom meetings.
Okay, we're on to the next question. What do you specifically plan to do to promote economic development and grow the town's grand list? Mr. Gambardella, you were first.
Yeah, that gets to the issue of economic development. And what we need to do really is partner with private industry in order to spur growth. First, you have to control the crime situation. I already explained that and why that's important. But more than that, I already talked to you about the property declarations and giving you a 50% discount off of the first year assets are placed in service. But if somebody really wants to put in light industry, for example, and they need sewers and streets, et cetera, there's no reason why the town couldn't partner with the individual or people or corporations that are looking to put business in Hamden and help defray some of those costs. We would then recover those costs through taxing the facility on a going forward basis. This is one of the reasons. I mean, you think about Hamden, how we're situated. We have 91 and 15, those 2 major routes. It's an attractive location. We just have to make it business friendly. Talking about business friendly, the zoning laws that we have and the barriers that we put in front of business. I'd work with the Chamber of Commerce and I met with them, and they feel very frustrated that they haven't been involved in government decisions. We're going to get them involved. We're going to look at the zoning laws. We might have to rewrite them just to make it friendlier. Again, they suffer from incrementalism too. we put these laws in place for maybe an incident that occurred 100 years ago and it never got off the books. We got to refresh the whole thing, make it more inviting. Hamden under new management. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, you're next.
Yes, thank you. So economic development is a massive priority for me because this is what is going to help our town and grow our grand list. We need a 5-year plan to let businesses know that we can stabilize our taxes and stabilize our finances. Businesses really just want to see stability out of us. We need to create a checklist for businesses so that we can streamline the process. When they go in for zoning permits, they should also be taking out building permits. When we do everything one at a time, it takes more time away from businesses being able to start up, and time is money. We also need to look at our zoning regulations so that they are aligned with the plan of conservation and development and reduce the number of appeals that we see for this zoning board of appeals, because that's also taking time away from businesses being able to start up. We need to take a look at our infrastructure, our sewers, our roads, storm drainage, fiber optic cable. It's time that we create a 21st century economy for Hamden. And again, I'm really happy to work with Ted Stevens, who is a traffic planner, so that we can create walkable shopping districts. That means that we're going to slow people down, make sure that they're seeing the businesses as they go through Hamden. And workforce development is obviously key. And I'm excited to work with Dominique Baez on that.
Mr. Lotto?
So we do need planning and zoning changes. And in order to attract new business to Hamden, we do also have to look at sewers. There's an issue of a lot of ideas that we can promote over by Quinnipiac on Whitney Avenue, for instance, but I do believe that there's sewer issues. It would be nice to encourage the walkers of Sleeping Giant to continue to walk down Whitney Avenue toward Quinnipiac and build a little shopping center with cafes and beautify that area as well and capitalize on it. I believe that if we got one big store to come in, an Apple store or a J. Crew type store, it would encourage people to come in from Cheshire and the holidays when the Quinnipiac when the Quinnipiac kids aren't there. I think that we need planning and zoning changes is key to get more businesses into Hamden.
Okay, thank you very much. We have now come to the time for closing statements. And Mr. Lotto, you are the first one to begin.
Okay, so what I see here before you are 3 candidates. We agree on some things, we disagree wholeheartedly on others. But we all want the same thing for Hamden. We want it to be a better place for everybody. We're willing to work to make that happen. I see 2 candidates that are or can be considered career politicians. I have no desire to be a career politician. I'm just here to listen to the residents and address their concerns and maybe make it a better place for everybody to live. I think Einstein said one time, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I think it's time for a change in Hamden. We need new blood and we need new ideas. I hope I can provide those for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, so yeah, if you have an electrical problem, you call an electrician. If you have a plumbing problem, you call a plumber. If you have a financial problem, you call a financial expert. Was my experience, nearly 40 years worth of experience. I have the qualifications that it takes to get the town out of the mess that it's been in for the last 20 years. I sounded the alarm when I was on the Legislative Council in 2005 to 2007 and went on deaf ears. Essentially, they poo-pooed any idea that I presented was overruled and outvoted. Now, for the first time, we are facing a financial cliff, and it needs somebody who can navigate the difficult waters ahead of us. I believe I can do that for the town. I can do it in a fair and balanced approach. I can do it with common sense approach. I can do it with building and fostering businesses in Hamden. I've given you a number of ideas of what it is I'd like to do and how I'd like to accomplish these tasks. These are concrete ideas. They're not pie in the sky ideas. They're ideas that people could wrap their heads around. They could see the logic behind it, and they know that they will work because they make too much sense not to work. I ask your vote for November 2nd. It is a critical election. A lot is riding on it, and I hope to see you at the polls. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett?
Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for this great discussion about the issues. I got into politics because I really care about our community, and I've worked very hard to create this diverse, fantastic slate of candidates, diverse in terms of life experience and professional experience. I know that I can tap into that experience as a leader for our town. Now, being the mayor is about more than just getting our finances under control. While that's very important, we need to make sure that we keep people safe and protect people while we get our finances under control. So it's very important that we elect a Democrat for our next mayor of Hamden, because as a Democrat, I care about making sure that we take care of people. So please vote for the Democrats on row A next Tuesday. And it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you all tonight. And if you'd like to hear more about my stance on issues, you can go to laurenforhamden.com and read up on some more of my platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to offer a special thanks to all three of the candidates for a lively and informative debate. And I will now pass the baton to Judy Lehman, who will give us some closing remarks.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I want to offer my thanks to the candidates as well, and to Carol, and to all of the people who helped behind the scenes, including particularly the timekeepers, Alice Baxter and Diane Hoffman, and all of you. There were 361 people the last time I checked. Now there are 298 who came. So clearly our goal of the League to get citizens active in their government and really care about public policy, it is coming to bear here in a very healthy way, I think. So thank you all for being here. And I see that Rachel has put up all of the links that we talked about at the beginning of our session. And I wish you all a good evening, and remember to vote on Tuesday, November 2nd. Thank you.